And we're on. Welcome back to the Lore and Valor podcast. I'm your host, Justin Watson. My guests today are Casey Ezzell, Air Force Academy graduate, currently serving Air Force helicopter pilot, and author of science fiction and fantasy, and Joelle Presby, Annapolis graduate, former Naval Nuclear Power Officer, if I got your MOS right, Joelle, and also author of science fiction and fantasy. So thanks for joining me today, ladies.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And today we're here to talk about Arcane Season 1. We went through a whole military decision-making process, deciding what we were going to talk about, and this is what we settled on. So
this is what your taxpayer dollars pay for, folks.
We applied all that training we received at our various service academies to deciding what streaming show we were going to bullshit about on the internet.
There were PowerPoint slides and the nuke did not provide them. That's amazing.
There were like two PowerPoint slides, and they didn't even really show up all that well. So, so anyway, I drove I helped drive the train on this one a little bit because Arcane is one of the things I've seen this year that really, like a lot of people, it took me by surprise, and I really kind of fell in love with it. Episode 1 was, I don't want to say one of the worst, but not, it was intriguing, but it's not, by far not the best episode of the series. Just a brief recap. You come into it and it looks like we're at the end of a failed revolution, is what we're looking at, with uniformed troops seeming to crack down on ragtag insurgents is what it looks like to me. Maybe that's my, maybe I cottoned onto that because that's my background, is fighting insurgencies. So that even in the fantastical setting, that coded to me automatically as that's what I'm looking at. You quickly, from there, you have a time jump and you go into a heist scenario where we have a gang of adolescents breaking into what looks like an upper scale mansion in a nicer part of this fantastical city of Piltover that goes horribly wrong. And you end up with the main characters, the two sisters, Powder and Violet, having to run from the police back to the I think it's called Zon, the lower socioeconomic part of the city, the slums, so to speak. And then from there, the rest of the episode plays out as to all the various cascading consequences of the failed revolution that we get in prologue, and then the heist that actually ends up detonating the mansion they're trying to rob from, because there are techno-magical items there that amateurs really need not be screwing around with that end up going off. So from there, we end up seeing the city's underworld a lot, and then we end up seeing how the law enforcement of this universe plays in to the undercity, so to speak, of this world. And I found all those interchanges very fascinating. But I'm gonna pause here and stop talking for a minute. Casey, you were the one we had to convince. So because you tried to watch this once and bounced off of it. So I'm going to put you on the spot and let you go first and talk a little bit about your impressions this time.
Well, I actually enjoyed it. I did. I will say that. And it was kind of funny because I was like, okay, I have to watch this show so I can do this podcast, and I'm going to take notes. So like, I got my pretty little notebook and my like colored pens so that I can could make notes. And I actually, overall, I really enjoyed it. But there was a couple of things that like stood out to me, and you mentioned this in your recap, that like the opening scene looks like a failed insurgency to you. And I agree, but that I noticed something about that opening scene too. And I thought it was, from a storytelling perspective, a interesting hook, sort of. The title of the episode, which you really don't see very much of the title of the episode. It's not like it flashes up or anything. It's just, there on Netflix. But the title of the episode is Welcome to the Playground, which is, a pretty good title for like, hey, this is the first episode in this journey that you're about to take. But it it struck me that it's kind of cool that it's like, welcome to the playground. And then the very first shot that you see is very much not a playground. And yet you have a voiceover, the little girl singing, you know what I mean? And so that juxtaposition right away was like, it twigged in my writer brain, like, oh, that's cool. You know, like that's something that piqued my interest and made me want to figure out more about what was going on. Even though the mom in me was like,
what are these kids doing here?
Well, yeah, I might, yeah. What the F are these, you know, get these effing kids out of there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and as an American, you know, as again, somebody who's been to Iraq and Afghanistan, it's like, keep your kids off the battlefield, please.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, if you can, like, I understand if they get
right,
caught
if you
up.
can. But then, you know, with recent events in Ukraine and you know,
It's not always
all of that
possible.
stuff going on. Yeah. I mean, that's what it made me think. I was like, shit, that sucks. You know, like just there's no two ways about it. That really sucks.
Yes.
So yeah.
Mhm.
So that was dark, and I'm sorry to bring us down, but
No. This is, for it being, you know, this is adult animation for sure, which does not mean it's pornographic, but it deals with some very dark, very mature themes. Yeah.
Yeah. Not a kid's show. I was explaining that to my youngest when she was asking me about, you know, what I was watching and stuff. So, so do you want me to just like go through my impressions overall, or you know, how much do you want me to talk before I really?
Well, you've kind of done an opening salvo. Joelle, why don't you jump in? What were your initial impressions?
I was wondering if anyone else noticed. I did not take it the beginning as insurgency. I thought a bomb had gone off with all the smoke around and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I was not surprised to find the children discover that their mother had died, because I have watched Disney for decades, and I know the mom does not survive for the story.
Yeah.
This is not a Pixar film, therefore there is no mommy.
Right.
I'm curious to learn why, because I did some Googling after I watched the episode, and I'm horrible at remembering names, even if they're my characters. So Powder and Vi are being cared for by Vander. I thought in the episode that Vander was their dad. But
yeah, I was curious about that too.
Yeah, he was. They don't.
I don't know why he cares for them.
Yeah. I don't think it's spoilers to say that, like, the implication is, I don't think they come out and explicitly say this. Maybe they do. Because I think I'm the only one who's watched all the way through to the end at this point. You guys are watching through episode by episode. I don't think they come out and say exactly what Vander's relationship was to their parents, just that he's someone who is close enough to their parents to feel responsibility for them. And you just have to go with it from there. Like, I think is the explanation.
Right. I definitely got that they knew him because he picked them up and they like curled into him, which you know, they're only going to do if you're familiar, at least.
Yeah. There's only a few people who usually fit that mold,
right?
Other than your folks. So you just understand that he raises them from that point forward, and it doesn't give you a lot of detail other than that, which I think by the end of the show you're pretty okay with. I don't think that becomes like a. I mean, you might be like, no, really, this bothered me throughout the whole thing.
By the end of the episode, I thought, okay, this guy is just a really good guy. He looks out for people in need, but he's also maybe not that experienced raising people, and maybe has come to the raising people thing late, because there are worse things
he didn't really intend to,
but he's decided not to tell them about it.
Yeah.
And let them kind of trust that they'll listen to him and do what he says instead of understanding the reasons, even as they're teenagers.
Yeah.
So I got this is interesting too, because I thought about that too. I got the impression that that there's like a curious mix of of worldliness and naivete that he has passed on to them as he's raising them. Because on the one hand, it's like, okay, he raised them to be thieves and con artists because that's the life he knows. You know,
if they got in a fight, did they win? That's important.
Right. If they got in a fight, did they win? They know how to, like, he's taught them how to defend themselves. But at the same time, he's trying to protect them and keep them innocent. And so therefore hasn't told them about, you know, oh, this might be spoilery. Can we be spoilery?
Yeah, pause. For the viewer's sake, like talking about TV and a show that's been on the air for a while, if you have not seen Arcane episode 1, pause this and go watch it, because we're gonna spoil the hell out of the episode. It's kind of hard not to pick it apart without talking about everything that actually happens, and there are definitely some spoilery stuff. I'm gonna try to refrain from late season spoilers when I'm talking, but there will be spoilers for this episode for sure.
Okay, good. So, obligatory spoiler pause observed. He doesn't tell them that essentially he has a deal with the enforcers that like, we'll stay out of your town, you stay out of ours, you know? And like Joelle said, like, that's pretty important information. You know, he tells them to stay out of the town, but he doesn't tell them why. And he's obviously very inexperienced at raising teenagers. Because, you know, speaking as someone who has raised at least one teenager, that is an absolute recipe to get them to do the thing that you told them not to do, is to say, don't do this, end of story. You know, like, I'm not going to explain myself.